I pulled my old Honda Civic into the circular driveway of the Morgan estate, feeling like an intruder in my own childhood home. The pristine white columns and manicured hedges looked exactly as they had 15 years ago, when I'd left for college and never really came back. My father's funeral was scheduled for 11, and I was already 20 minutes late. Not on purpose, but maybe some part of me had been dragging my feet. The parking area was filled with luxury cars, BMWs, Mercedes, a few Teslas. My scratched-up Civic looked like a grocery cart among racehorses. I straightened my black tie in the rearview mirror and took a deep breath. The suit was my only good one, bought 3 years ago for a colleague's wedding. It fit well enough, but it wasn't the kind of tailored perfection my family expected. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Inside, the house buzzed with the quiet efficiency of a well-orchestrated event. Caterers moved through the marble foyer, carrying silver trays and flowers, expensive ones, filled every corner. I recognized some faces from my childhood, family friends, business associates, people who'd known my father as Richard Morgan, real estate mogul, not as the distant man who'd barely spoken to me in recent years. Jake. My mother's voice cut through the murmur of conversations. Victoria Morgan approached me with her signature grace, dressed in an elegant black dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Her embrace was brief and felt rehearsed. "You're late." "Traffic on I-95, I said, which was partly true. She studied my face with those sharp blue eyes that had always made me feel like I was failing some test I didn't know I was taking. "You look thin. Are you eating enough?" Before I could answer, my brother Brandon materialized beside her, his presence commanding even in grief. At 42, he'd inherited our father's imposing frame and business instincts. His handshake was firm, calculated. "Good of you to make it, Jake." Dad would have appreciated it. The words stung because they felt like charity. Brandon had always been the golden child, groomed from birth to take over Morgan Realty Holdings. He spoke about our father with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. "Where's Emily?" I asked, looking around for my sister. "Networking," Brandon said with a slight smile. "Even at a funeral, she's working the room. You know how she is." I did know. Emily had turned the Morgan name into a lifestyle brand, complete with an Instagram account and a line of luxury home goods. She was probably in the living room right now, consoling someone while subtly promoting her latest venture. The service was beautiful and impersonal. I sat in the back row, watching my family accept condolences with practiced dignity. They belonged here, in this world of wealth and influence. I was just visiting. As the crowd began to disperse, I found myself drawn to my father's study. The room smelled of leather and old books, exactly as I remembered. His desk was clear, except for a single framed photo, the four of us from 20 years ago, before everything fell apart between us. Tomorrow, they'd read the will. I already knew what it would say. Nothing for the teacher. The next morning, I sat in the mahogany-paneled conference room that had been converted into a makeshift legal office. The same room where my father had held countless business meetings now felt like a courtroom. Heavy curtains blocked most of the sunlight, and the air smelled of coffee and expensive cologne. Howard Glassman, the family lawyer, had known our family for over 30 years. His gray hair was perfectly combed, and his wire-rimmed glasses gave him an air of scholarly authority. He'd arranged our chairs in a semicircle facing his desk, like students waiting for a lecture. Brandon sat confidently to my right, his legs crossed, checking his phone intermittently. Emily had chosen the chair closest to Howard, her designer handbag placed strategically on the floor beside her. My mother occupied the center seat, her posture rigid with anticipation. I'd taken the chair furthest from the action, near the window. Part of me wanted to be close to an escape route. "Thank you all for coming," Howard began, his voice carrying the weight of formality. "As you know, We're here to execute the final will and testament of Richard Morgan." He opened a thick folder and withdrew several documents. Richard was very specific about his wishes regarding the distribution of his estate. The room fell silent except for the soft ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. Howard cleared his throat and began reading. "To my eldest son, Brandon Morgan, I leave controlling interest in Morgan Realty Holdings, including all commercial properties, residential developments, and business partnerships. The current estimated value is $47 million. Brandon's face remained composed, but I caught the slight nod of satisfaction. This was what he'd been waiting for his entire life. "To my daughter, Emily Morgan, I leave the Morgan Foundation, all residential properties in Fairfield County, and a trust fund valued at $15 million to support her entrepreneurial endeavors." Emily's eyes lit up. She reached over and squeezed my mother's hand. "To my beloved wife, Victoria Morgan, I leave the estate house, all personal effects, and a monthly allowance of $50,000 for the remainder of her life." My mother's smile was subtle but unmistakable. She'd maintained her lifestyle and dignity. Howard paused, and I felt the familiar knot in my stomach tighten. Here it comes, I thought. The part where I get nothing. Or maybe some token gesture. A watch, a small savings account. Something to make it look like I hadn't been completely forgotten. "And to my youngest son, Jake Morgan." Howard's voice seemed to slow down, and I prepared myself for the inevitable disappointment. "I leave my personal library and a trust fund of $25,000 for educational purposes." The room was quiet for a moment. $25,000. It was more than I'd expected, honestly, but it felt like a consolation prize. The teacher gets books and a small fund for school supplies. Brandon leaned back in his chair, the tension leaving his shoulders. Emily smiled at me, with what looked like pity. My mother's expression was unreadable. "Thank you, Howard," Brandon said, standing up. "I think we can all agree Dad made the right choices. Each of us gets what we can handle responsibly." I stood up too, ready to leave with whatever dignity I had left. The books would be nice, actually. My father had good taste in history and literature. "Jake," Howard called out as I reached the door, "could you stay behind for a moment? There's something else we need to discuss." I turned back, confused. Brandon and Emily were already heading toward the door, discussing transition plans in low voices. "What's this about?" I asked. Howard waited until the door closed behind my family. Then he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between seriousness and anticipation. "Jake," he said quietly, "there's another will." "Another will?" I stared at Howard, certain I'd misheard him. "What do you mean, another will?" Howard gestured for me to sit back down. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope, yellowed slightly at the edges. "Your father came to see me 3 days before he died. He was different, more reflective than I'd seen him in years. He asked me to prepare a second will, his true final testament." My hands trembled as I took the envelope. My name was written on it in my father's careful handwriting, "For Jake, when he's ready to understand." "He wanted you to have this privately first," Howard explained. "He said you'd know what to do with it." I broke the seal and unfolded the document. The legal language was dense, but one phrase jumped out at me immediately. "I hereby revoke all previous wills and testaments." Below that, in stark black letters, "To my son Jake Morgan, I leave the entirety of my estate." The room spun. This can't be right." "It's completely legal," Howard said softly. "Witnessed, notarized, and filed. Your father was very specific about his reasons." There was another piece of paper behind the will, a handwritten letter. I recognized my father's precise script immediately. "Jake, if you're reading this, then you've just learned something your mother and siblings don't know yet. For 40 years, I built this empire believing that strength meant taking what you wanted. I taught Brandon to be ruthless, Emily to be calculating, and I pushed you away for being neither. But watching you these past few years, seeing you choose a classroom over a corner office, watching you mentor those kids who have nothing, I finally understood what strength really looks like. You're the only one who chose purpose over profit. You're the only one who became the kind of man I should have been. The empire needs someone who won't corrupt it. Someone who will use it to build something better than what I created. I trust you with this because you're the only one who never wanted it. Your mother will be angry. Your siblings will fight you, but you'll know what to do. You always did. With love and regret, Dad. I read the letter 3 times, my eyes burning. Howard sat quietly, allowing me to process what I'd just learned. When was this signed? I asked. 3 days before he passed. He was very clear about his instructions. He wanted you to decide how and when to reveal it to the family. I looked up at Howard, overwhelmed. Why didn't he tell me? Why didn't he ever say, "Your father wasn't good with words when it came to feelings, Jake, but he saw what you were doing. He saw the teacher who stayed late to help struggling students. He saw the man who chose integrity over wealth." The weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders like a lead blanket. Everything, the company, the properties, the foundation, it was all mine now. But more than that, it was my choice what to do with it. "What happens now?" I asked. Howard smiled for the first time that day. "Now, you decide what kind of legacy you want to leave." I spent 3 sleepless nights deciding what to do. Howard had given me the power to choose. I could keep the secret, quietly transfer control to my siblings, or face the storm that would come with the truth. But every time I considered taking the easy path, I remembered my father's words. "You'll know what to do. You always did." The Morgan Foundation's annual donor luncheon was held at the Green Ridge Country Club, the same place where my family had celebrated every major milestone. The ballroom was filled with Connecticut's elite, politicians, business leaders, and philanthropists who'd supported the foundation for years. It was the perfect stage for what I had to do. Brandon stood at the podium, delivering his acceptance speech as the new head of Morgan Realty Holdings. He spoke about continuing our father's legacy, about aggressive expansion and maximizing returns. The audience applauded politely, but I could see the calculation in their eyes. They were already measuring him, determining whether he was worth their continued investment. In closing, Brandon said, his voice carrying across the room, "I want to assure you all that under my leadership, Morgan Realty will continue to be the most profitable real estate enterprise in New England." The applause was enthusiastic. Emily beamed from the front table, and my mother nodded approvingly. This was their moment of triumph. I stood up from my table in the back, my heart pounding. "Excuse me," I called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something you all need to know." The room fell silent. Brandon's confident smile faltered as he looked at me with confusion and irritation. "Jake, what are you doing?" Quote. I walked toward the front of the room, feeling every eye in the place following me. Howard sat at table 12, and when our eyes met, he gave me the slightest nod of encouragement. "My father left a second will," I announced, my voice steadier than I felt. "One that none of you have seen." The silence was deafening. Brandon's face went pale. Emily's mouth fell open. My mother's eyes narrowed dangerously. "What are you talking about?" Brandon demanded. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the sealed document. 3 days before he died, Dad revised his will. He left everything, the company, the properties, the foundation, to me. The room erupted. Gasps echoed from every corner. Brandon stepped away from the podium, his face flushed with anger. "That's impossible. It's completely legal," Howard said, standing up from his table. "I witnessed it myself. Jake is telling the truth." Emily shot to her feet. "This is a setup. You two conspired to." "I've never spoken to Jake about this until yesterday," Howard interrupted calmly. "Richard made this decision on his own." My mother remained seated, but her hands gripped her napkin so tightly her knuckles were white. She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, part fury, part devastation. "Why?" Brandon's voice cracked. "Why would he do this?" I looked at my brother, this man who'd spent his entire life preparing for this moment, and felt genuine sorrow for him, because he finally understood what success really means. The first lawsuit arrived at my apartment on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a stern-faced courier who made me sign 3 different documents. Brandon had hired Kellerman and Associates, the most aggressive litigation firm in Connecticut. The papers accused me of undue influence, elder manipulation, and fraudulent conspiracy. Reading those words felt like being punched in the stomach. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since the luncheon. Reporters from the Hartford Courant, business journals, even a blogger from a gossip website wanted statements about the teacher who stole millions. I'd stopped answering calls from numbers I didn't recognize. At Jefferson High School, whispers followed me down the hallways. Students who'd never paid attention to me before now stared openly. During lunch duty, I overheard two seniors talking near the vending machines. "Did you see the news? Mr. Morgan's like crazy rich now. My mom said his family's trying to take it back, says he tricked his dying dad or something. That's messed up. Mr. Morgan's cool. Remember when he stayed after school every day to help Marcus with that college essay?" Their defense of me should have felt good, but it didn't. I'd become a spectacle, a story people told instead of a teacher who helped them learn. The legal meetings consumed my evenings. Howard's office became my second home as we prepared for depositions and court hearings. Brandon's lawyers were thorough and ruthless, demanding medical records, financial statements, even emails between my father and me from the past 5 years. The problem was, there weren't many emails. My relationship with Dad had been distant, which Brandon's team was using to prove I couldn't have had legitimate influence over him. "They're going to argue that the will is completely out of character," Howard explained during one late-night session. "They'll say Richard would never give everything to the son he barely spoke to." "Maybe they're right," I said, rubbing my exhausted eyes. "Maybe this was all some kind of mistake." "Jake," Howard's voice was firm, "I knew your father for 30 years. He was many things, but he was never impulsive. This decision took courage." The pressure was affecting my teaching. I found myself distracted during lessons, my mind wandering to legal strategies instead of lesson plans. My students noticed. Even Marcus Chen, one of my brightest seniors, seemed confused when I forgot we had a test scheduled. The worst part was Emily's media campaign. She'd hired a public relations firm and was making rounds on local news shows, painting herself as the victim of a manipulative brother. "Jake was always jealous," she told Channel 8 News. "He couldn't succeed on his own, so he found another way." The comments on the news website were brutal. "Greedy teacher steals from grieving family." Another example of public education corruption, should be fired immediately. I was sitting in my car in the school parking lot, reading these comments on my phone, when someone knocked on my window. It was Malik, one of my struggling students, a kid I'd been tutoring after school for months. "Mr. Morgan?" His voice was muffled through the glass. "You okay? You've seemed really stressed lately." I rolled down the window. "I'm fine, Malik. Just tired." He studied my face with the perceptiveness that made him such a good student despite his circumstances. "This is about that inheritance thing, isn't it? People are saying stuff." "What kind of stuff?" "That you don't deserve it, that you're not really rich people." He paused. "But I told them they don't know you like we do." The next afternoon, I found Malik sitting alone in my classroom during lunch, staring at a crumpled piece of paper. His usual energy was gone, replaced by something that looked like defeat. "Hey," I said, setting down my coffee, "shouldn't you be in the cafeteria with your friends?" He looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "Got this yesterday." He handed me the paper, a letter from the state university. "They're pulling my early admission. Said my family's financial situation changed, and I don't qualify for the scholarship anymore." My heart sank. Malik had been working toward this scholarship for 2 years. His single mother cleaned offices at night to support them, and this scholarship was his only shot at college. What happened? Mom lost one of her cleaning contracts. The family said they're restructuring their household budget. "We're like $500 over the income limit now." He laughed bitterly. $500. That's what stands between me and my future. I sat down across from him, remembering all the afternoons we'd spent working on his application essays, the pride in his voice when he talked about studying engineering, becoming the first person in his family to graduate college. "There have to be other options," I said, "other scholarships, financial aid." Mr. Morgan, I've applied to everything. You know that. You helped me fill out half those applications. He slumped in his chair. Maybe college isn't for kids like me. Maybe I should just get a job, help Mom out. Don't say that. You're one of the smartest students I've ever taught. Smart doesn't pay tuition. I watched this kid, this brilliant, hard-working 17-year-old, give up on his dreams because of $500. Meanwhile, my family was spending thousands on lawyers to fight over millions they didn't need. Malik, I said quietly, what if I told you that money doesn't have to be a problem anymore? He looked at me skeptically. What do you mean? Quote, what if there was a way to make sure kids like you, kids who work hard and deserve a chance, could go to college regardless of their family's financial situation? Mr. Morgan, you can't afford. Actually, I can, I leaned forward, and you just helped me figure out what I'm supposed to do with my father's money. The realization hit me like lightning. All this time I'd been focused on the legal battles, the family drama, the question of whether I deserved this inheritance. But sitting here with Malik, seeing his talent being wasted because of money, I finally understood what my father had seen. This wasn't about what I deserved. It was about what I could do. Stay here, I told Malik, pulling out my phone. I need to make a call. I dialed Howard's number, my hands shaking with excitement instead of anxiety for the first time in weeks. Howard, it's Jake. I need you to set up a meeting with the foundation board. I want to establish an education fund, full scholarships for students like Malik, kids who have the grades and the drive, but not the money. Jake, that's a wonderful idea, but are you sure? The legal challenges? I'm sure, I said, watching Malik's confused but hopeful expression. This is exactly what Dad wanted me to do with this inheritance. I can feel it. When I hung up, Malik was staring at me. Mr. Morgan, are you saying? I'm saying you're going to college, Malik, and you're going to help me make sure other kids can too. For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again. The teacher who believed in his students. The man my father had chosen to carry on his legacy. 2 weeks later, I walked through the glass doors of Morgan Realty Holdings for the first time in over a decade. The lobby was all marble and chrome, designed to intimidate rather than welcome. Employees hurried past in expensive suits, their faces tense with the kind of stress that comes from constantly being measured by profit margins. Mr. Morgan? A young woman approached me hesitantly. I'm Sarah, the office manager. We weren't expecting you. I know, I said, adjusting my teacher's blazer, the nicest jacket I owned. Is there a conference room where I could speak with everyone? She nodded, clearly confused. All the employees? Everyone who wants to listen. 20 minutes later, I stood before 43 employees in the main conference room. They looked uncertain, whispering among themselves. Most had probably heard about the legal battles from the news. Some might have wondered if I was there to fire them all. Hi, I began, feeling more nervous than I had facing a classroom of teenagers. I'm Jake Morgan. I know this situation is confusing for everyone, and I wanted to talk to you directly about what I'm planning. A middle-aged man in the front row, I recognized him as the head of commercial development, raised his hand. Are you really Richard's son, the teacher? I am. And I know that probably doesn't inspire confidence in my ability to run this company. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Here's the thing, I continued. I don't want to run this company the way it's been run. I want to transform it into something that actually helps people. The room was silent, but I could see I had their attention. I'm proposing we redirect 30% of our residential development toward affordable housing. I want to partner with local schools to create internship programs. I want this company to be known not just for maximizing profits, but for maximizing impact. A woman near the back spoke up. That sounds great, Mr. Morgan, but what about our jobs if profits go down? Nobody's losing their jobs, I said firmly. In fact, I think we'll discover that doing good business is actually good business. Communities that thrive create more opportunities for everyone. The questions came rapidly after that. How would we fund affordable housing? What about shareholders who expected high returns? Was I planning to change the company's focus entirely? I answered as honestly as I could, admitting when I didn't know something, but but explaining my vision, a real estate company that built communities, not just properties. As the meeting ended, Sarah approached me again. "Mr. Morgan, most of us have been hoping for something like this for years. Working here has felt..." She paused, searching for the right word. "Empty. Like we were just making rich people richer." That evening, I was reviewing development proposals in my father's old office when my mother appeared in the doorway. She looked older than I remembered, her usually perfect composure cracked with exhaustion. "Jake," she said, stepping into the room, "we need to talk." I gestured to the chair across from the desk. "Mom, sit, please." She perched on the edge of the chair, her back rigid. "This has to stop. The lawsuits, the media attention, this fantasy you're playing out here, it's destroying our family's reputation. Maybe our family's reputation needed destroying." Her eyes flashed. "Your father built something important here, something that mattered." "You're right, but he built it for the wrong reasons." I leaned forward. "Mom, when's the last time you felt proud of what this company actually accomplished? Not the money it made, but the good it did." For a moment, her composure wavered. "Jake, you don't understand. This world, this business, it's not about helping people, it's about survival. It doesn't have to be." Brandon cornered me in the parking garage beneath the Morgan Realty building 3 days later. I was heading to my car after another long day of meetings when I heard his footsteps echoing behind me. "Jake." His voice was cold, dangerous. "We need to talk." I turned to face him. My brother looked haggard, his usual confidence replaced by something desperate. "Brandon, if this is about the lawsuit..." "Forget the lawsuit." He stepped closer, and I could smell alcohol on his breath. "You want to play this game? Fine. But you have no idea what you're messing with." "What are you talking about?" He pulled out his phone and showed me a series of photos. My stomach dropped. They were pictures of me leaving my apartment, walking into school, sitting in my car. Someone had been following me. "Nice life you've built, little brother. That apartment on Elm Street. Your routine at Jefferson High. That student you've been mentoring. Malik, right? Sweet kid. Would be a shame if something happened to disrupt all that." The threat was clear, and rage flashed through me. "Are you threatening me? Threatening my student?" "I'm telling you that this family has worked too hard to let some idealistic teacher destroy everything we've built." His eyes were wild now. "Give up the inheritance, Jake. Walk away quietly, and everyone stays safe." "You're insane." "I'm desperate," he snarled. "Do you know what it's like to have everything you've worked for stolen by someone who never even wanted it?" That same evening, I discovered Emily's latest media assault. She'd appeared on Connecticut Tonight, the local talk show, with tears in her eyes as she told the host about her manipulative brother. "Jake was always jealous of our success," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "When he couldn't make it in business, he chose a career where he could influence vulnerable people, first students, then our elderly father." Quote. The host nodded sympathetically. "And you believe he used his position as a teacher to manipulate your father's final wishes?" "I know my brother. He spent his whole life resenting our family's success. This inheritance isn't about Dad's love. It's about Jake's revenge." The interview went viral online. By morning, I had angry voicemails from parents demanding I be fired, and Principal Santiago called an emergency meeting. "Jake," he said, closing his office door behind me, "I've known you for 8 years. You're one of the best teachers this school has ever had, but the school board is getting pressure. They want me gone. They want this controversy gone." He leaned against his desk. "Look, I don't care about your family drama, but these kids need you. Don't let your siblings' poison reach into this classroom." That afternoon, I found an envelope slipped under my apartment door. Inside was a single photo. Malik walking out of school, and a note in Brandon's handwriting. Still time to do the right thing. I stared at that photo for a long time, thinking about my father's letter, about Malik's dreams, about what kind of man I wanted to be. Then I picked up my phone and called Howard. "It's time for that family meeting," I said. "All of them, tomorrow night." I waited for them in my father's study, the room where this had all began. The evening light filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the Persian rug. I'd arranged 4 chairs in a circle. No power positions, no head of the table. Just family, if that's what we still were. Brandon arrived first, his jaw set with defiance. Emily followed, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor. My mother came last, moving slowly, as if each step required tremendous effort. "Well," Brandon said, remaining standing, "here we are. What's this about, Jake?" "Sit down," I said quietly, "please." "I'll stand." "Brandon," my voice was sharper now, "sit down." Something in my tone made him comply. For the first time in our lives, he actually listened to me. "I know about the threats," I began, looking directly at Brandon. "The photos, the surveillance, the veiled warnings about Malik. I know about the media campaign, Emily. And I know you all think this is some kind of game where the winner takes everything." "It's not a game," Emily said. "It's our lives." "You're right. It is our lives. And Dad's legacy. And the question is, what are we going to do about it?" Quote, I stood up and walked to my father's desk, picking up the folder I'd prepared. "I'm not here to gloat or to punish anyone. I'm here to offer you a choice." My mother finally spoke. "What kind of choice?" "The company is mine now. That's not changing. The legal challenges will fail, and we all know it. But what I do with it, how I rebuild Dad's legacy, that's up to all of us." I opened the folder and handed them each a document. "This is my proposal. Brandon, I want you to head our new community development division. Real salary, real authority, meaningful work building affordable housing and community centers. Emily, I want you to run the Morgan Foundation, expanded to include education scholarships and youth programs. Mom, I want you to chair our advisory board." The room was silent as they read. "You're offering us jobs?" Brandon's voice was incredulous. "I'm offering you the chance to be part of something that matters, something Dad would actually be proud of." Emily looked up from her papers. "And if we say no?" "Then you walk away. The lawyers stop, the media attacks stop, and you get nothing. But you also lose nothing more than you've already lost." Brandon stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. You think you can just—" "I think Dad saw something in me that you refuse to see in yourselves," I interrupted. "The capacity to choose purpose over profit. But maybe he was wrong about you. Maybe you're too far gone." The words hit like a slap. Brandon's face flushed red. "Too far gone? You sanctimonious—" "Brandon, stop." My mother's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through his anger. She was staring at the proposal, tears running down her cheeks. "Just stop." She looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before, vulnerability mixed with something that might have been pride. "Maybe your father was right," she said quietly. "Maybe we forgot what we were supposed to be building." Emily shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her perfect composure finally cracking. Brandon stood frozen, his anger warring with something else, perhaps the first glimpse of his own conscience in years. "I need time to think," Emily whispered. Brandon looked between all of us, then walked toward the door. He paused at the threshold. "You really think you can change us, don't you?" "I think you can change yourselves," I said, "if you want to." He left without another word. 6 months later, I stood at the podium of the newly opened Morgan Community Learning Center, watching Malik adjust his cap and gown. He was the first recipient of the Morgan Education Foundation Scholarship, heading to MIT in the fall to study engineering. 23 other students from Jefferson High and schools across Connecticut would follow him. "Mr. Morgan," Malik said, approaching me after the ceremony, "I still can't believe this is real." "Believe it," I said, straightening his graduation stole. "You earned every bit of this." The learning center buzzed with activity. Former Morgan Realty properties had been converted into tutoring spaces, computer labs, and study halls. Emily had thrown herself into running the foundation with surprising passion, discovering that helping kids succeed gave her more satisfaction than any luxury purchase ever had. "Jake," I turned to see my mother approaching, moving more easily than she had in months. The weight of family conflict had lifted from her shoulders, replaced by something I hadn't seen in years, genuine contentment. "How's the advisory board meeting going?" I asked. "We approved 3 more community centers," she said with a smile. "And that literacy program you proposed. Your father would be—" She paused, searching for words. "He would be amazed by what you've built." Through the center's large windows, I could see Brandon working with a construction crew. He'd eventually accepted my offer, though it took him 2 months to swallow his pride. Now he was overseeing the development of affordable housing units, and I'd caught him smiling more in the past month than I had in the previous decade. That evening, I drove to Evergreen Cemetery. My father's headstone was simple granite, engraved with just his name and dates. I pulled out a folded letter, one I'd written but never intended to send. "Dad," I said quietly, placing the letter on his grave, "I think I finally understand what you meant about legacy." The letter contained my plans for the next 5 years, a scholarship program that would expand statewide, partnerships with community colleges, job training programs for adults. It was ambitious, maybe impossible, but it felt right. As I walked back to my Honda Civic, the same car I'd driven to his funeral, I thought about the choices that had brought me here. I was still a teacher, still living modestly, still the same person who valued purpose over profit. But now I had the resources to make that purpose reach further than I'd ever imagined. My phone buzzed with a text from Principal Santiago. "New student needs help with college applications. Reminds me of Malik. You free tomorrow after school?" I smiled and typed back, "Always." Some things would never change, and maybe that was exactly the point. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.